everybody. Welcome to our second last session of the day, and I hope everyone's getting nice and settled. Anthony is here to tell us how to use Python to try and save the world. So Anthony worked at Google, and he's going to tell us all about that, and I'm going to give him as much time as he needs. So without further ado, Anthony, thank you.
Those lights are really reflecting off my glasses, so I might be a bit distracted, but that's fine. So if I don't look up at the back over there, it's just because it's glaring. Okay, how to use Python to save the world. We give it a good old go. When Larry Page took over as CEO of Google, he asked all of us to have a 3-word mission statement. Mine was save the world. My partner went, that seems a little ambitious. I've got to try. And I want to emphasize this. This talk is not about legal advice. Okay, I'm Anthony, I'm he, him. I currently work at United Workers Union, which is a big union representing the most low-paid and exploited workers in the world, in the country. I'm their resident nerd, although I am until the end of January. So at the end of this talk, if you like it, offer me a job or something. Okay, what this talk does not include. Normally with these sort of talks, I do lots and lots of screenshots. This is a nerd conference, right? So I figured to talk more nerdy stuff. There's a bunch of my older talks recorded online. If you search for Google Crisis Response, you'll find videos, probably. I'm not getting into too much detailed discussions of why we did the incidents. We had metrics for what incidents we responded to and which ones we didn't. I'm not going to give you queries per second or users per second or anything like that because I'm under an NDA for the rest of my life and I don't want to get sued by Google, and there's a bunch of you Google snitches out there, I know. So yeah, if I'm vague, that's why. Assume there's a reason I can't talk about. Okay, there's one slide here that I'm going to warn you in advance. That's going to pack a little bit. There's a little bit of heavy stuff. It's going to be quite short, just to give people a heads up. Okay, what this talk includes. How, mostly not what or why. It's going to cover a lot of why not, because people often see this stuff and go, wow, that's cool, I want to do it. There's tricks and bits and traps that you may want to bear in mind. There's not going to be any Python code. I'm going to have links at the end of the talk to links to where you can go and find some of the Python code. Some of it's pretty old. Most of it's pretty short, written fairly quickly, and most of it doesn't have tests. Or sometimes we went back and filled the tests in, but when you're having to launch like 5 times in 6 hours, you don't really have time. This talk does not include legal advice. Oh, it does include legal advice. So, trap number 1, which is the legal advice trap. It's one question. Should I get legal advice? If you ask yourself, should I get legal advice? There is an obvious answer. Yes. Yes, you should get legal advice. Okay? This is important. You're dealing with lives. You're dealing with property. If you screw up, bad things can happen to you. You may listen to podcasts and YouTubes and Twitch streams of lawyers. They may be lawyers. They're not your lawyer. That's important. Some other examples are not lawyers. That's Arrested Development guy. That's a cat. That's a dog. That's me. And that's ChatGPT. One thing I would just really take away from this, do not get legal advice from ChatGPT ever. I'll put this in the Discord later. There's a famous lawsuit from New York called Avianca versus Marta, where a law firm used ChatGPT to look up some law citations. ChatGPT made it up. The judge came back and said, give me those citations. They went and asked ChatGPT, and it made up even more, and the lawyers got in a lot of trouble. And which comes to the next thing. Don't make things up. This is a good way to get yourself in a lot of trouble, right? If you make things up, you're going to get in lots and lots of trouble. And by make things up, I mean, and I know people that have suggested doing this. They were getting the Weather Bureau data, they were getting fire prediction data, and they wanted to sell, fire predictions out for the next 2 weeks. I sort of screamed at them going, you people are crazy. You're going to get in so much trouble. Because again, if you're a fire service, you've got some insurance, if you've got some insurance, people are more likely than not going to sue you. As I say, you will get in trouble, and it's bad trouble. The next thing about legal advice is make sure you get a lawyer who actually knows what they're talking about. Right? It's not just a generic lawyer. A lot of this stuff, particularly around emergency data, it's it's specialty law. You want to find someone who actually knows what they're talking about. If they don't know what they're talking about, or if they may go, "Oh, it's not really my area," say, "Hey, can you point me at someone who can help?" Or just shop around, find another lawyer. Again, you will want to get legal advice for this stuff, unless you're suicidal. Sorry, not suicidal. Unless you're willing to take a risk. So, Google can afford lawyers. I may come to some of this later on, but maybe not, because it'll probably get some lawyers in trouble. Lawsuits are not fun. You might go, "Oh, but talking to a lawyer, I have to pay by the hour." If something happens, right? If you accidentally screw up and somebody burns down their house, it's going to be a lot more expensive. So do it up front. Okay, this is me and Python. I was the Python release manager for 5 and a bit years. It's rewarding, but geez, it's a lot of work. I did a talk on Friday, a lightning talk, which will hopefully go up if you want to learn more about that stuff. It was, Guido basically tricked me into doing it. One of the things I'm most proud of in the 5.5 years was I killed Python 1.5. Red Hat were constantly going, "Oh, but our enterprise customers need it." And it's like, no, they don't. You just don't want to fix your tooling. So I yelled at them a lot. Chris reminded me of this yesterday. We do not talk about 1.6. I was not release manager for 1.6. I was very, very not happy with it. One of the things that came out of doing the Python work was I actually got a Google job, which is pretty neat, because Google does a lot of Python. Google employs Guido. Guido kind of owed me, so he was a reference me, and I got a job at Python. So I got a job at Google. I started working at Google on a thing called Google Tasks. A few months after we started the Google Tasks project, Google Sydney had Rob Pike. A few months later, we went to New York to hand over the Google Tasks project. I got to share an office with Brian Kernahan, the guy who wrote C. So I'm sitting there in Brian Kernahan's office with him, and we're swapping jokes about Rob Pike. That was a bit weird, author of one of my favorite university textbooks, speaking about one of the other university textbook writers. I worked on a bunch of geo and map servers, so the various API servers, the thing that renders stuff on maps. And somewhere along the line, we'll come to that, I started doing part-time work on Google Crisis Response. And you'll see that it's a Google.org project. Google.org's a bit of a fiction. It's not a profit. It's not a non-profit. But it's a good bit. It's the bit of Google did try to do good things for the world. Right. So it was pretty cool. But don't think it was a not-for-profit. It's like WordPress.org. It's not a not-for-profit. Okay. I may go back and forth in this talk. I'll sometimes call it geo, sometimes call it maps. They're pretty much the same thing. Unless you work at Google, you're not going to care about the distinction. So here's some of the things I'm going to talk about. This is just a selected timeline of some of the Google Crisis Response stuff. Hello, there we go. So that's a partial list of all of the disasters we worked on. I mean, very partial. There were dozens more over the years. We actually had tools that when a disaster happened, we'd type in numbers and it'd go, okay, yeah, this is a 6.7 out of 10, probably don't need to respond. This is a 9 out of 10. The reason we cared about that was when we went to respond, we went into 24/7 follow the sun mode. So it meant myself and the guys in Japan would handle our time zone, New York would take over, then California would take over, and back around it again. If we were to respond to every single disaster, we'd be in that mode forever, and we'd just burn out. So the ones I'm going to probably try to focus on, you can see here, and I'll come back to, don't worry, I'll come back and you don't have to read them all at once now, but you can see there's a lot of stuff, So we're going to start with before crisis response was a thing. So Hurricane Katrina happened in 2005. We got a whole bunch of imagery and put it on Google Maps. There was a big button when you were looking at Katrina, and you clicked it and it showed the flooded side. This was really popular is not the right word. It was well regarded. Lots of people enjoyed it. If you want to know more about that, this book is really good. It's a history of Keyhole, which is the company that built Google Earth, and they got acquired. There's a bunch of names those of you who worked at Google will recognize in there because some of them are still there. But anyway, I recommend it. It's good fun. What fun. The next one, and this is where I started working on this stuff, was Black Saturday. Black Saturday was awful. What was especially awful was there was no map. There were two different government websites because one was for public land fires and one was for private land fires because fires care about that. All right? And they didn't have a map, they just had a list of town names. You know, here's the little town that the fire's closest to. So, you know, not great. So we thought, okay, let's just map it. You know, we can take the town name, we can geocode it and put a little marker on there. First problem, the 2009, the JavaScript API wasn't very performant and we had a lot of markers. And so we're like, oh, this is terrible. Some of you may be a little offended by the next slide. We use Flash. Because the Flash API was much more performant, and the person who maintained it was online all Saturday helping us. We pushed out about half a dozen different versions. I wrote the back end, which was Python, which just scraped all of the fire data, geocoded it, output KML, Flash would just render it. Of course, use Beautiful Soup for that, because obviously. I'm going to mention a spelling mistake problem here. There'll be another one coming along a bit later, which is much funnier. But they're putting all these town names into a table. They made spelling mistakes. The geocoder would mostly pick them up. Sometimes the spelling mistakes were so bad that it'd get kicked out to one of us to manually look and go, I have no idea what that word means. Oh, hang on, I've got it. It's like crossword puzzles almost. This is an image of what the fire map looked like, the Flash version. This is a bit later when we'd added a bunch more fire services. You can sort of see there's a lot of fire maps and a lot of fire markers. And this is partly why the JS API suffered. The JS API team on the Monday morning went, what do you mean it wasn't good enough? And they went and rewrote all the rendering stuff. So, you know, that worked. As I say, I'm going to put links to the code at the end. Most of it is really bad. Like, it was written in the space of hours. You know, we went from Raoul going, we should do a map at about 10 a.m. to me ringing media organizations at 4 p.m. going, you don't know who we are, but we've got a map. And they went, oh, cool. Oh, damn. Oh, damn. It's not going. Okay, yeah, no promises. Some of the code will run, some won't. Why is you doing that? Oh, sorry. Okay, trap number 2, and this is a big one when you're doing this sort of map data formats. See all those ones there? Apart from the no feed available ones, and I'll come to that in a minute, pretty much all of the fire services had a different format map feed, which is really annoying. The other thing about this one, copyright and licenses. Like, you might feel like, I don't need to care about copyright. I'm fine. I'm doing the world a good. No one's going to come after me. That's a risk you might want to take. It's a risk you might not want to take. A lot of these were Crown copyright. In the US, government-provided data is public domain. In Australia, the default is Crown copyright, which means you can't do anything with it unless you ask and get a license. We may not have, may have used it anyway. And I've spent about a decade going to all the fire agencies around Australia and going, can you please CC BY your fire data? You're not going to sell the fire location data. Just make it available for everyone to use. Anyway, yeah, it was Flash. It worked. One of the things about crisis response was pragmatism. Generally, we had to get stuff done now. There was a real time constraint, and you just use whatever works. Okay, the next one, Haiti. 2010, there was a devastating earthquake around Port-au-Prince, like really bad. And this is where crisis response comes in. One of the product managers in New York went to his manager and said, we should do something around this. And his manager went, congratulations on your new role. And Prem went, who's doing my existing job? He said, congratulations on your additional role. So yeah, oh, look, crisis response, there we go. A bunch of the team from Crisis, the new formed Crisis team, flew to Port-au-Prince and they were camped out in tents while C-130s landed next to them on the runway. Pretty intense. They went around looking for what was needed. And the main thing is people from the diaspora were going, are my family okay? Ping in about 3 days of non-stop coding, wrote this. You can see there it's got one big button that says, I'm looking for someone, and another big button that says, I know where someone is. This is a later version of it. I couldn't find screenshots of the older one. A lot of this stuff, we didn't have screenshots because we were busy. We eventually let Facebook do it because they've already got the social graph, and means one less thing we have to do. Next up, Christchurch. 2011, late February, Christchurch had a big earthquake and a lot of bad things happened. Turns out, though, people might not remember, there was actually a first earthquake about 3 months earlier, which was when they discovered, oh, we didn't know Christchurch sat on a fault line. And so if I get it right, the first one in November made the earth go that way, and the one in late February made the earth go that way, so all the buildings went boom. It was not good. So we decided, the crisis team, so it was me from Sydney, a couple of people from California, a couple of people from New York, we thought, let's go over and see what we can do to help. The first place we went to was Wellington to meet with the government. Okay, that's the Beehive. It's their seat of government, their Parliament House. It's sitting on top of a fault line, which is not awesome. Seems like a poor choice. Gets a bit sillier. Underneath there is something that looks like a big circular 1960s primary school. It's deep underground, and it's got the Emergency Response Centre. Not ideal. Really not ideal. The other fun bit was mobile phone coverage didn't work. So they all had old landlines, and when we went down there and we got lost because we couldn't ring anyone, we had to go sort of open random doors and go, hello, do you know where these people are? It was very confusing because it was an emergency response centre, all the doors were unlabelled. I don't know why. So then we went down to Christchurch, and one of the things that happened in Christchurch was we met with the cops and said, what's your biggest problem? And they said, cars. And we're like, what? And so the centre of Christchurch was marked as the red zone. Everyone had to get out straight away. So a lot of cars were left behind. So over the next couple of weeks, people ring the cops every day going, where's my car? I'm 20 k's to the shops. And the cops are going, we don't know, we'll find out, and we'll give you a ring back. Sometimes they'd ring back and say, sorry, your car's in a parking garage and it's been squished, or it's too dangerous to enter, or the tow trucks can't fit. Sorry about that. The problem was they still were getting all these 111 calls. So we and they were storing it all in Excel, which is, again, they didn't know better. We built it in a couple of days, built a little app engine app, so they upload the Excel spreadsheet every day, which had, here's the cars we know about. And so then we put a little banner on the top of the police website saying, if you're looking for your car, go here. And you type in the rego and say, sorry, your car's squished, or your car's at Hagley Park, or we don't know, please put in your contact details, and that data would go back to the cops. This has come up a bit in the talks here, talking about education. Often people don't realise that this stuff is doable, right? There's a sort of a learned helplessness about it where you think, this is really hard. And it's like, it's not. It took Lee and I a couple of hours to write this little app engine app. And it just took a huge amount of pressure off the cops. They made the on-hold message say, if you're looking for your car, go to our website. Around that time, I sort of joined Crisis as a sort of 50% job. I was half on the map servers and half on breaking the map servers. And no one really said I can't do that. And they actually found it valuable for me to break things. At around the same time, the New Zealand government sort of contacted me and said, please don't delete things. Please don't delete your old imagery of Christchurch. In particular, don't delete the street view. We'd actually driven Christchurch about 3 months before the first quake, so we had a really good record of what Christchurch used to look like. Sorry, just getting a glass of water. Now, we weren't going to go and redrive Street View straight away because Street View is really expensive. You've got to drive cars up and down every single street. So we don't do it very often. And they're saying, please don't, when you do it, don't delete the old stuff. That's a time machine. That's a Street View time machine. If you go to Street View, look in, I think it's the bottom left, and when you go there, you'll see a little date slider. And so you can actually see previous versions and then next versions. I got to launch it in Christchurch Museum. I'm sorry, I'm going to tear up a bit here because it was really moving. They didn't know what was happening. I sort of turned up and said, oh, by the way, we've saved a copy of your city. And literally, this sounds a bit Trumpy, but it's true. People in the room were crying. Sorry, it just made me go a bit. This is a good moment to sort of say the bad slide. Trap number 3 is about impact. And I'm not talking about impact on the world. I'm talking about impact on you. This stuff is hard, right? Especially if you do it repeatedly, it's going to hurt. And really important, you need to keep yourself healthy. If you think you need a break, you need a break. If the people you're working with say you need a break, you need a break. You're not going to be any use to anyone if you burn out. You've got to protect each other. Like, probably even more so than the legal stuff, that stuff hurts. I did this stuff for nearly 10 years, and I'm still recovering. Sorry. But that time sort of phase, just roll forward a little bit, that's when Macromedia Flash died, or rather the Maps API Flash died. And no real loss. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Tohoku Sendai quake, tsunami, whatever you want to call it. This happened about a week after Lee and I arrived in Sydney. We're outside on the balcony having a beer. Some people ran up to us going, you might want to look at the news. We bolted down the length of the office to see what was going on, went, oh, God. This, by the way, was where the second spelling mistake came in. We had a thing on the front page saying because we couldn't tell anyone. We wanted people to know. It's like there's been a tsunami warning for Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, a lot of different cities, a lot of different countries rather. I'll come back to that in a bit. The next thing that happened was really cool. Was that Honda came to us and said, we've got these aggregated maps of where all the cars are passing through, which allowed us to put it on the map and say, these roads are passable, or they were in the last 6 hours, which is great because people could find out how to get in and out. Sorry, I'll just do this one quickly. I did a trip to not quite Somalia with the UNHCR. I kind of fibbed to the Google security people, so they let me go. It wasn't a war zone when I got there. It was by the time I left a week later. And I didn't quite go to Somalia apart from the beer run. Very surreptitious in a big white UN four-wheel drive, crossing the border into a little town in Somalia to collect beer. Okay, we then went, okay, we want to turn off map visage. We still need to have something we can put maps on. So we brought Crisis Map. And the idea of Crisis Map was that what if all the different types of map data, whatever format we have, and we smushed it all into a single map. And we made that map configurable, and we made that map shareable, and we made that map embeddable. Here's an example of one of them. This was Hurricane Sandy. You can see all those things down the side there. They're all the layers you've turned on. When you share it and share the viewport, it just goes straight up on, it's an embedded thing. People put it on their news sites and the like. You could have multiple crisis maps. For example, that's a more detailed one for just New York. This stuff got embedded on the front page of every goddamn news site in the country, in the world, sorry. We had a big QPS number, big. We broke lots and lots of stuff. Why did Google let us do this stuff? Well, that's because we broke stuff. Maps SRE were like, great, you broke it before a customer did. I mean, well, sometimes they swore at us, but it made Google look good. I did a bunch of TV interviews, and one of them was saying, why does Google do that? And I said, because we can. And that sort of knocked them back, and they're like, what? Okay, I guess. Google had a thing, they may still have a thing called Google Geist, which is like a survey of the staff. Repeatedly, a huge percentage of the staff would unsolicited say, we like working at a company that does that, which is pretty good. And no one stopped us. No one ever said, you 15, 20 people should go back and get real jobs. So, trap numbers who we'll come back to before are saying map data formats. These are some of the ones I've dealt with. I pretty much hate all of them. If you think you've got a favorite map data format, come and talk to me later, and I'll tell you why I hate it. The only one is shapefiles, because they're mostly self-contained. The problem is, things like KML or the ArcGIS stuff, it tells you what the data is, and it maybe have a format, but it doesn't tell you how it should look. And people come to you and go, this doesn't look exactly like it does in ArcGIS. It doesn't look exactly like it does in Google Earth. Please fix it. And that's really fiddly. I maintained the KML renderer, and it was really, really fiddly, right? Yeah. By the way, this is a fun little game. If you're looking for map data, site blah, 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 that string, it'll identify the HTTP interface for ArcGIS, and you can download JSON. It's really cool, but bear in mind you may not have a license to do it. Anyway, who uses the cloud? I hate the cloud. I hate the cloud because of satellite imagery. I hate clouds in particular. Because you go to get a photo from a nice flying space robot and all you get is goddamn clouds. Okay, why could we do that? That's a Delta II carrying GOI-1. Notice that there. We paid for part of that launch. That meant we could go to GOI and say, hey, could you take a photo of this bit of the world? And they go, sure, why not? That's GOI-1 up in space. It's still going like a decade past its expected lifetime. Now, this, I tried to get some graphics to do this, but GOI-1 is what's called a polar orbit. So imagine it's just going round and round like this in a circle, and the Earth is spinning underneath it. What that means is you pretty much get one go a day of any particular part of the world, but it's high res, so you can only see a little bit of the world, so you've got to be fairly precise as to what you want to look at. In some cases, you just get cloud after cloud after cloud after cloud. Yeah. More clouds, worse I get, grumpier I get. We get a lot of very high resolution photos of the top of clouds. Okay, let's go back to the Honda road data. What we're saying is, what does this data show? Is it relevant? In the case of earthquake, the roads are going to gradually get cleared. It's road closure map. What's more important is what it's not saying. People were saying we could launch it for the floods in Japan a year later. It's like, no, you can't assert that just because the roads are open now, there might be a landslide or something from the floods. It's dangerous. You can't tell people these roads are not covered in bushfires. You can say these roads are closed, but you don't know where the bushfire's going to go. And also, by the way, even when you do that, you get some unexpected problems, things that you didn't expect to happen. So I'm going to talk about Black Sunday. Ugh, I had way too many coffee. Okay, it's fake. You'll understand why. That's a burned area map. Can you see that little dot sort of down towards the bottom left? In the middle of this big fire zone, there was a little bit of unburned stuff. If I take away the fire map, that's what it was there. People know what a Wollomai pine is? Often called a dinosaur tree. It's really old, really valuable, well, not valuable, really critically endangered. There's about 60 of them left. The location is hidden because some idiots hiked in and gave them diseases, and that's why there's 60 of them left. So I rang the RFS GIS folks, and they went, oops, and coloured in that a little bit. What was actually happening was that a whole bunch of firefighters went in by helicopter with shovels and irrigation systems and backpacks, and just to save these trees, just this little valley. I knew where it is because I was tasked to sort of keep an eye on it to make sure someone didn't put it on maps. Anyway, how am I going for time? Oh, pretty good. So that's some of the code. You search for those strings. Good luck getting Map Visage to work. Even if you put the Flash into WASM, the Flash library's gone. Person Finder probably works. Crisis Map does work, but again, I didn't have time to do a demo. I was too busy rewriting the slides. This is like the third version of in the last 3 days. Yeah, oh, by the way, the Wollomai pine has been cloned, and you can actually get them for your backyard. If you're in a temperate environment and you've got a loamy soil, I'd encourage you to go to a florist and get one. Help preserve a species. Anyway, thanks. Sorry I spoke too fast. And looks like we've got time for a couple of questions, if people...
Oh, yeah, does anybody have any questions?
No? Did I miss anything? I don't think so. Well, I did. I missed a lot of things, but...
I mean, it's still an incredibly important work, and
yeah.
A very important talk for us all to be aware of, particularly...
Yeah, just remember, if you think this might be needed, talk to the fire services or the emergency service and go, hey, do you need this? And for the love of God, do not try to do your data yourself. They're the domain experts. Let them do the data. You can probably help get the data out, maybe build them a mobile app. The guy who noticed the Wollomai pine hole was actually the guy who built the Fires Near Me app for New South Wales. And he messaged me and went, isn't that where the Wollomai pines are? And I went, oh, crap.
Should we be putting the Wollomai pines on the internet?
Yeah, search for Wollomai pine. You'll...
Okay.
You know, Oh, sorry, taken away. The screen's away. But yeah, if you just look on Wikipedia, you'll find information about it.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry?
Yeah, we're incredibly grateful, and particularly what you say about burnout. I think that's really important, particularly people who have a responsibility.
Just, it will cause you trauma if you do enough of this stuff. Yeah. Just be aware of it. It is really important that you look after yourself, because you're no use to anyone if you're burned out.
Friends too. Well, thank you very much, Anthony. That was fantastic. Really great.